Today, you're going to meet one of my dear friends, Rhonda Hicks. Rhonda is the most put together woman I know. Picture perfect family with rock star husband, a son, a daughter, a thriving career, house in the burbs, down to even Fletcher the dog. She's a true powerhouse and has been an unwavering rock in my life. But what happens when that rock begins to crumble under the weight of life's challenges? That's where Rhonda found herself just a few months ago, broken, tethered, and torn. Today's podcast is a journey of recognizing that life can be overwhelming and that the most beautiful act of bravery for yourself and everyone who loves you is taking a moment to exhale, to breathe, to pause. This episode is a testament to the power of vulnerability, empathy, and the strength of human connection. Let's start a conversation, shall we? Oh, we got to talk about that.
Pass the bacon.
If we're going down, put your mask on first before you can help anyone else.
You invited me in and you just made me feel so comfortable.
I'm about to spit out my coffee.
And margarita hour, here we come.
Welcome to Unconditionally Her Conversations, a podcast for women that sets the stage to spark inspiration, create change, and unite women from all walks of life. I'm your host, Karen Shane. This podcast shares that when we truly come together in sisterhood, we form a symphony of profound voices that have the power to transform each other's lives. So whether you're in search for motivation to chase your dreams, or seeking wisdom to navigate life's twists and turns, or just simply yearning to connect with some kindred spirits, well, you found the place. Come along on this empowering journey as we explore captivating stories, conquer daunting challenges, and revel in the inspiring triumphs that shape the landscape of women's lives. Are you ready? Here we go. So as we begin this podcast, I just have to say, Rhonda, that in addition to your incredible bio, your remarkable spirit, and your stunning beauty, and I mean that sincerely, you are the Thelma to my Louise.
Yes, that's right.
Now, I have to say, we all know the ending of the movie. We're not going to go there. Not that part.
Not that part. Right.
But we've had such a friendship over the last few years, and I love it because I cannot talk to you and I feel you. And then I have to connect with you. And then I can go a month or 2 months and then literally connect with you again. And
pick up right where we left off.
I know. And that's so special. When I first met you, it was actually on Zoom. And I knew you were going to be a presence in my life. And I knew that you would change my life forever. And you did? Do you remember our first meeting?
I do. I remember the Zoom. I remember I was super nervous because I was going to be telling you my story and wanting to be a part of that project that turned out to be such a pivotal part of, my journey and being able to share my journey on such a grandiose level. So I remember sitting in a room and I remember you coming on, and I want to say that you were just like you are now, just comfortable and laid back on a couch, just relaxed. You invited me in and you just made me feel so comfortable. But yes, I do remember that first conversation very well. I knew that I needed to tell the story.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how it was going to be received, and I didn't realize how impactful it would be for me to share. But I learned that it was always necessary for me to share it with a larger audience, because you never know who's going through the same, who it's going to affect, who it will touch. And your platform allowed us to be able to do that. So I thank you again. Now, it's funny because it was around this time, several years ago, that it happened. And so I thumbed through all of those memories, and that group of women, still keeping in contact with a lot of them even to this day.
Oh, Brookshire. Oh, we love our Brookshire. So for those who don't know the story or how this kind of cryptic conversation that we're having, Rhonda is a cancer survivor, and years ago, we created a stage show called My Second Act. And we would travel the country and seek out women cancer survivors who had a very impactful and very powerful story and who had a delivery that would pretty much drop your jaws. And we would put together a stage show, a live stage show, put it in theaters where women who have gone through a cancer journey would share the stories of your life after. And you auditioned, you're from Raleigh, North Carolina, and you auditioned for the Raleigh show and you
Yes.
blew me away. But before we talk about the cancer journey, I
Okay.
want people to know more about Rhonda before the journey. And Charles, and
Yes.
I want everyone to know a little bit more about Rhonda, Rondina, as I call you.
Rondina, yes. So, yeah, so who am I? I was originally, I'm born and raised in New Jersey, born and raised in New Jersey. So I'm a Jersey girl, but I've been down in North Carolina for 30 plus years, but you can't take the Jersey out the girl. So I'll always be from Jersey. North Carolina for the last 30 years. Went to school down here. That's how I transitioned down to town, down to the state, and never left. Never left. So I guess you could say I'm a Tar Heel girl now. But from a professional perspective, I have been in the fields of telecom and IT. I studied management when I was in school, and I've been fortunate enough to practice in the field of my endeavor for these, wow, now 30 years since I initiated my career. So always been in some form of management. So people management, project management, event management as well. So always in that field in some way, shape, or form, right? And so I met and married my husband. He and I dated while we were working for 6 years. And then we got married. We had 2 children. I have a daughter. Clark is 16, going on 17. My son, Avery, is 14, going on 15. So I've got 2 teenagers in the house. Y'all pray for me. And they are now they just started high school. So exciting times there. But after I had my 2 now teens, there was a period of time there where things got really busy. And so I was in a management position. My husband, Charles, was in a management position. And I was at a place and space in my life where having 2 kids, 2 and under, it was a lot. It was very stressful, just a lot of undertaking to try to, I don't like using this word, but it is applicable in this space, try to balance it all, right? And so
Mhm.
at that time, I talked to my husband about stepping away from work. At first, he looked at me like, ma'am, what's going on? What do you mean step away? And so I kind of explained it to him, and I'm grateful that I have a partner who understood, and we came to a decision that I was able to step away and be home with the kids. And so I was home with them for 4 years. That transition, as many of our mommies who work, and I will say that it is a job, it is a full-time job, who work at home, raising their children and their family. That is something you should put on a resume because it
Amen.
is a job and we don't get paid enough. But that was probably the hardest transition that I've ever made in my career, transitioning home to take care of the 2 littles, and did that for 4 or 5 years. And after that time, or during that time, I started my own business. I started an event management business. And so I always loved planning events. And while I was out, I wanted to still try to have something for myself in loving the planning aspect of things. I started Amazing Grace Event Management, and literally with them on my hip was going and visiting with vendors and establishing relationships. And my very first client was a 5-year-old princess party. It was a 5-year-old, and that was a serious event too. But I took it seriously, right? So I've done weddings and milestone events and events on a national scale and even an international scale. Everyone deserves to be served and their vision to be realized. But that was the span of what encompassed the event management business for me. And after my daughter went back to kindergarten, I then decided collectively with Charles that it was time to return to corporate. And so went back to corporate, and I've been now back in that capacity for a little bit more than 10 years. still balancing the event management business. So I still have support nonprofit clients in their ventures and other corporate entities in planning events for them. I also do some speaking engagements and some things along those lines. Also, too, though, if I may, Karen, along the way, recognize that we as women oftentimes get so caught up in what we do that we forget who we are.
Mm.
And so I was defining myself through my job, through my business, through being a mom, being a wife, and all of these things. And I had to stop for a moment and realize that those are the things that I do, but I didn't really know who I was. And so in that journey was birthed what is now called She Is. Back then it was called Project She. It's kind of evolved a little bit. But when you ask who is she is every woman at every stage, at every age, and everywhere. And so that platform has really provided me the opportunity to be able to socialize with like women,
Yep.
to have she treats was what we call them, and their experiences where we as women come together to support one another, to talk about issues of value, issues to be able to really discuss with like minds. We celebrate one another because it's so important for us to be able to support and celebrate. And so you were part of that many years ago.
Yeah.
You came to Raleigh to be able to support that. And so She is also a large part of who I am becoming, because it is a process and it's not something that I'll ever check the box on, because I want to continue to ever change and ever grow.
Yep.
But it's such an integral part of who I'm becoming. So that's me in a nutshell. We skipped over the
The
part
moment.
we're going to dig a little bit deeper on. But
Yeah, we're going to
that's a
dig.
little bit more about me.
You do everything so well with such grace, but there was a moment in there that your life changed, which is ultimately what brought us together.
So I'm going to take you back to 2014, and probably a little bit before then, actually. I had been experiencing what I thought was acid reflux and was prescribed some medication. And I'm not one that likes to take a lot of medication, so I don't know that I necessarily was ever really taking it very regularly. But even when I did, I just noticed that the symptoms were getting worse and more aggressive. So I went to an urgent care and they suggested that I get an endoscopy. And so, I went to a gastroenterologist, got the endoscopy, no problem. Everything went well. And so he calls us for a follow-up visit, and I go in for the follow-up visit. My husband wasn't able to make it that day. So I went by myself. Mom wasn't there, no one there to support. So I'm thinking that it's just routine follow-up. Oh, what am I going to be prescribed? What is it, right? And when he came in the room, I noticed that he was very disheveled and he was very just not settled. He then verbalized, which I feel like I'm sitting in that room right now and in that space. And he said, "You have follicular lymphoma." And I just sat there for a moment. And of course, rewinding it in reverse, my first thought was the connection to lymphoma and the fact that my father also too had lymphoma. And although he beat it twice, it eventually morphed into leukemia and he passed of that. And so I'm sitting in that room and my immediate thought was, oh, I'm going to die.
Mm.
I will say that I had to sit with that for a moment, as I'm sure you can identify with and remember yourself as a fellow cancer survivor. But I will be honest with you and saying that the next thing that came to my mind was, okay, what are we going to do about it? Because I have 2 young children, because I have an event tomorrow that I need to be prepared for.
Just like us women. I got an event tomorrow. Just tell me.
Immediately just went into go mode, right? And that's not to say there weren't the being just so distraught and just so heartbroken, but I had to immediately shift into being able to do that, because what I recognized through my journey, one of the many lessons was that just because life changed for me, life did not change for those around me. So I couldn't necessarily say to the event that I had the next day, where, by the way, I had to work 16, 17 hours. Oh, I can't work because I have this diagnosis, right? So fast forward several months, and we are, you know what it was, Karen? It was, I remember, never forget, it was in June. It had to be of 2015. Cancer free, everything was good. and it was National Survivors Day.
Mm.
So it had to have been the first Sunday in that month because that's when National Survivors Day is celebrated. So we're sitting at the table, we're eating breakfast, about to go to church. And I told Charles that it was time to tell Clark and Avery. And I sat at the table and I asked them, you know what cancer is? And they said yes. And I told them that, so well, mommy had cancer, but she's better now. And so they're just looking, because they were about maybe 6 and 8 at the time. And so they're just looking, she's like, okay. And I said, I'm all better. I still have to take medicine, but I'm doing okay. And so then my daughter, she's just sitting there. She's like, okay. And she said, so God healed you? And I said, yes, absolutely. I am better. I am healed. She said, okay. She said, all right, well then pass the bacon. Pass the bacon were the next 3 words out of her mouth. So what that showed me in that moment is that kids are resilient.
Yeah.
And once she heard that I was healed and that I was better, she was ready to eat, passed the bacon, and went on to church. So that was the story with the kids. But there were so many defining moments, Karen, throughout even that whole process. I will tell you, after I got diagnosed, I was leaving the office, saw a high school friend that I hadn't seen in 20 years. And I'll never forget what she said to me. She said, well, she was like, well, Rhonda, how are you doing? And I said, well, and her name was Karen. I said, Karen, you know what? I'm not doing great. I said, just pray for me. And she took my hand and she said, you want to pray right now? And I said,
Ugh.
yes. And she took me back in somebody's room. I don't even know where we went. Somebody's room in the office. She found her space and she prayed the prayer that I needed to hear at that time. And in that moment, in the absence of my husband, in the absence of my mother, and what I thought to be the absence of God. However, he showed me through her that he was, and I still get chills, still get chills to this moment, because moments after the diagnosis, he reminded me, I am still with you.
Yeah.
Not even moments after. And I will tell you, even still, what is even more revealing there is that she said, you know what? I wasn't even supposed to be here today. My husband's appointment was a month ago.
Wow.
It had to be rescheduled to today. So she said, I want to let you know that I was here for you today.
Wow.
So listen, I can tell you more about the oncologist that I was referred to. I can tell you about the sermon that was preached on that Sunday after I was diagnosed. Reminder after reminder that God was telling me that he was going to be with me through this journey, and he still is to this day.
Amen. There you go. It also shows the power of women and that we sense stuff and we know stuff and we can immediately be there for each other, which is why you are doing what you are doing with She Is. And
Yeah.
I am doing what I'm doing with Unconditionally Her. And then we marry when we need to. But
Yes.
it's all about that spirit and it's all about women. And what I love about how you and I and our friendship developed is simply because it was around that community spirit. It was around the women. And we had a common denominator with survivors and survivorship. But even beyond that, even through the different events and the different things that we did outside of joining forces in the survivorship world, it has proven to me over and over and over that if we have community and we respect the people, we don't have to think alike, we don't have to be alike, and we don't have to look alike. But if we have each other, then life can be a little bit easier. You were going to come back several years later and have to hear those same words.
Yes. Fast forward to 2021 summer. And of course, as a survivor, I had to continue to get checked every year because the cancer that I was diagnosed with was not curable. So it's something that by science's standards, I would need to continue to revisit. So I go for my yearly scan in June. And again, I'll never forget it. Something about June, now that I'm thinking about it. Something about that month of June. I'll never forget. The kids were about to get out of school. And the news came back that the cancer came back. And again, Karen, and this is all kind of coming to me at this moment, but again, probably within days of that, I think that happened on a Thursday. That Saturday, we were having a celebration for my daughter's 8th grade graduation. So again, did life stop? No, it did not. To put her celebration on hold because of a change with my situation. The treatment plan was more aggressive. It happened very quickly, 10 to 12 weeks in succession. And we got through it, but it was tough. It was tough physically, emotionally, all of those areas that anyone goes through when there's some type of traumatic event like that. But what I will also say is that me being a little bit older, if I may, this perimenopausal situation was the perfect storm. So my body was like, what is happening here? What's going on? So in addition to the treatments and everything else, my body was just all out of whack, right? But again, we go through it. And with my treatment plans, as with 2014, after I enter into remission, I go through 2 years of what is considered maintenance treatment. So every other month, I still go back and I still have my immunotherapy treatments. And so I'm actually still in the midst of that right now. I'm coming up on the end of it. Thank the Lord. I will be done by the end of this year. So we will have to come back together and celebrate again. But yeah, so the bottom line is that since 2014, going through treatments for 2.5 years, and then it coming back, going through more aggressive treatments, and now another 2.5 years, my body begun to fail me. My doctor just finally said at the end of last year, he was like, that's it. Your body's tired. So that's what happened to me physically, emotionally, mentally. And so in combination with all the other things in life, the momming, the wifing, the corporate professional stuff, the organizations, all of the things that we are and the things that we do, overwhelm set in. It began to just really become very heavy for me. And I was in a place where I was just very saddened and that I knew I had to do something different. So I took time away.
You checked out.
I literally checked out. I explored my options with my job and talked about it with my husband. And yes, I checked out of, I don't want to say life, but I stepped away from a lot of things, from a lot of obligations. I simplified things. I spent a lot of time with myself. I reprioritized things. I journaled. I wrote out my thoughts, prayed, meditated, talked to God about all of the things that had been happening for me. And at first I was nervous at the notion of, oh my gosh, like I'm going to step away from my job. Like who does that? But in recognizing that many jobs, and I was fortunate enough because not every job, but many jobs do have the resources out there to afford you to be able to step away. And so I'm grateful that I work for a company who has those benefits available. But I decided to step away for several weeks and really just be with myself and do all the things that I just mentioned. In addition to that, if I may, I also, for the first time in my life, began to talk to someone. And I'm not talking about talking to a girlfriend or talking to a husband or talking to a professional.
Yep.
Because I knew that I needed an unbiased opinion and a different perspective to help me to be able to maneuver through all of the feelings and the emotions that I had. And what I realized through that experience, through that new perspective, is that what I was actually experiencing in some way, shape, or form was like PTSD. We as women, we go and keep going and energize a bunny. We're not built that way.
Right.
Many of us, let me say this. We don't grant ourselves the permission to step away. We don't allow ourselves to take a moment. Some of it may be what we think we're supposed to do or how we think we're supposed to be by society standards or somebody's standard. But I will say this, when am gone to the next life, nowhere on my grave will it be written, Rhonda conquered all things. You have to live in the present and recognize your situation in the present. You're not going to get an award for being stressed out. You're not going to be rewarded for not taking care of your body. If anything, counterintuitive. That is when things set in. That is when you're most exposed. That is when your immune system is at its lowest. To think that the superwoman idea that we have is to be standard is actually absolutely the opposite. What I've learned is that the word perfection or perfect, it really shouldn't even exist in Webster. Should not even be a word because it is not attainable. Because what I think is perfect, you may not think is perfect. So it's subjective. So that means it's not real. So why do we always want to strive to be perfect or all things for everybody when it's not attainable?
Well, I think we have to recognize that we are fixers, we are the nurturers, we are the motivators, and that is all okay. That's why God created us as beautiful.
Yes. Yeah.
But I think we're in a time, and I worry about this younger generation, where social media and television and everything that's surrounding us tells us we have to be a certain way. And the societal pressures that we feel, and then we get so wrapped up in it, we forget we have a support system. We forget about our self-awareness, our personal growth. We let self-doubt come through. You recognized that everything was coming down on you, and
Heavy.
everything was heavy. There is not one single person out there that's going to listen to this podcast that hasn't had that feeling. I went through it last summer. My world felt like it crashed, and it was accumulative of so much stuff that happened.
Exactly. You don't even realize it.
Oh, I know. And then all of a sudden, one day you get up and it's hard to breathe. It's hard to exist. It's hard to brush your teeth, for crying out loud. And it is our responsibility as women to recognize that we're going down a path that we don't need to go down, and that we need to stop, take a moment, find that self-awareness enough to say, okay, I have to do something. And you did. You took your challenge, and now look what you can do, because this is what you're going to start doing for other people now, and that's motivating them.
To do the same. You're absolutely right. And maybe not in the same way that I did it, right? We have to individually figure out what's going to work best for our situation. What worked for me may not necessarily fit in for everyone else, but the steps that it takes to make the decision to do something different is imperative. It is necessary. And whatever that looks like for you, the bottom line is that you just need to do it. And if it means stepping away and taking the dog and heading to the mountains and saying, I'm out, I'm disconnecting, I just need a moment to just be with me, myself, and I. If that's what it looks like for you, then absolutely do that. If it means speaking to someone else, then do that. If it means stepping away from your job, then absolutely do that. If it means going on a staycation or a vacation, please do that. Whatever it looks like, to your point, what needs to happen is that self-introspection.
Yeah.
That honesty with self and saying something needs to change. I have to do something differently. And sometimes it's very hard for us to do, to be able to say, oh, wow, this is not going the way that I want for it to go. We have to all just understand that that's just how life is. That doesn't mean that I necessarily did anything wrong. There's no one to place blame. It is what it is.
How has that changed your relationship, both with your husband and your children?
I will say that I'm extremely fortunate and very grateful to have a partner, as I stated before, from when I told him that I needed to step away from work And then in this as another example that he understood and he was supportive. And then in telling my children, because I did obviously, I chose to tell them, they're older now, so I was able to have the discussion with them. It was a teaching moment for them, but also it was a moment of vulnerability for me in that they were just able to see me not necessarily as mom, but just as someone who needed some time. And so I was able to kind of tell them that in a way to say, mommy's not perfect. Mommy doesn't have all the answers. And mommy needs help. It's my heart's desire. It's my heart's prayer that they understood it in a way to know that they too, should they experience some of the same, or should they feel similarly, that they will be able to come to us and that we can figure out what we will need to do to be supportive of them. So, yes. So, like you said, my circle, my mom, my close friends, and I remember even you reaching out to me when I had talked about it, and you're just like, oh my goodness, this is something. Like, we need to talk about this because not enough people are granting ourselves the permission to be able to say, it's okay and I got to change. So, those who are going to support will figure out how to do that. They will ask the right questions as to how they can support you in that, or how we can amplify the message, which is why I'm always ever so grateful to you to be able to say, okay, sister, well, now we got to talk about this because more people need to hear about it. So extremely pivotal and very necessary for me to have gone through that experience and taken back the ownership and the accountability for myself to want to be better and do things differently.
You have a beautiful daughter.
My Clarky Lee's. She's a junior. I can't believe it.
She is of age where she's already faced some stuff.
Yeah.
But in 10 years from now, when you look at her and you think back on your life as to where you were at that age, 10 years down the road, what do you want her to feel and love most about her mom?
I just want her to know that being true to self, being forever authentic, being always honest with yourself is what's most important. It's not pleasing others. It's not doing for others. It has to all start with you. And I hope that through this journey and in everything that I do, again, it's my heart's prayer that I am able to demonstrate that through my actions. It's funny, they just started school yesterday and, they can't stand it, but we always sit them down and get them prepared for the year and expectations and all the school stuff. But in addition to that part of the conversation, we talk about how we as parents are here to be of support and that we're not perfect. There's that word again. And that we want to be able to be supportive of them for whenever and for whatever. Whether they may do something that they maybe should have, could have, shouldn't have done or not, we're still always here. So I hope that 10 years down the road, that's what she sees. And I will tell you, I will be honest with you, that's one thing that I struggle with often, Karen, is am I doing right by them? Am I doing right by my kids?
We're about to start crying.
I know. Didn't have my tissues. They're going to wear my tissues. But yeah, I mean, that's the most important thing. And the best way that I can teach them is by demonstrating it, right? So you can say it till you're blue in the face. I can say it a million times over and over again. But I have to live it and I have to walk it. So it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to show them that you too are human and that you go through stuff. And I just always think, I'm just like, oh, I just hope I'm doing the right thing to be able to show her that, yeah, I'm your mom, but I'm also I'm still learning. I'm still changing, evolving, growing. And it's okay to need to pivot. It's okay to do something different. It's okay to ask for help. Just hope that I'm doing the right thing.
I want to share a quote from your website, sheisrhondahicks.com. We are all on this fantastic, crazy yet beautiful, challenging yet rewarding, emotional yet euphoric pilgrimage we call life. Whew. Although at different stages, phases, and ages, our personal experiences may be unique, but there are common threads that bind us together. We are all a work in progress. Rhonda, what is next for you?
Oh, wow. It's really just to continue to amplify the message, to continue to have conversations like this, to take off the mask, remove the veil. It's funny, that was my devotion this morning, and just removing the veil and just being real. That's what She is all about. Just having come together moments with other women to be able to do just that. That is the mission. That's what I feel is part of my life's purpose. And so I did mention that word balance. That's another word that doesn't sit well with me, because oftentimes it's like, what does that mean? Balance beam. Because you know what? And this is so interesting. And this is something that when I speak to others, I say, so Simone Biles, she's back. She's
Oh, yeah.
back just like she never left. She was like, okay, yeah, I'm just going to come on back and I'm going to just go ahead and win real quick. But even her on the balance beam, she still wobbles. And she still may pivot. So even she, who is the best in the world at her craft, still is not perfect. There's that word again. So as opposed to trying to attain that perfect balance or be that perfect person, I offer the concept of just being in rhythm and the flow of life. I am going to be putting together an event for November to be able to talk about the rhythm of life. And like you said, what am I going to do? Continue the message, talk about what's relevant and what's happening in my life, because oftentimes it's going to be relevant and happening in others. And so for
Amen.
those that may not necessarily feel comfortable enough to talk about it, oftentimes if you hear about it and you can identify with it, then you'll want to hopefully come out with your story or figure out what you can do. So that's the objective, Karen. It's just to really continue to amplify, to continue to share, and to continue to evolve and grow as a person. That's why was created. And, to your point, when you were talking about it earlier, that all that had to go on pause. I had to just stop and everything and just be still in that time away, just to reconnect with me. So now it's time to move forward.
I am so proud of who you are.
My friend.
I am so happy that we are the Thelma to each other's Louise. I'm grateful for your honesty. I'm grateful for your gift of exhaling. Congratulations on your survivorship, sweetheart. There's great things yet to come.
Stay tuned and exhale.
Bye.
Don't forget to take a moment to exhale.
The lesson in self-awareness we explored today is nothing short of mind-blowing. I shed a couple of tears. I think we've learned exhaling is the most profound act of self-compassion. It's a reminder that amidst life challenges, we possess the power to care for ourselves, to find calm within, and to extend that same compassion to others. So as we wrap today's episode, I encourage you all to give yourself a quick check-in. Where are you today? Do you need to take a deep breath to exhale? Perhaps check in on someone else who might be struggling. To reach out to Rhonda, visit her website at sheisrhondahicks.com. I think she'd love to hear from you. If you have a question or a comment, give us a shout at unconditionallyheard.com or just say hi. You can also subscribe to our articles and find out more about upcoming events and podcasts. Thank you, ladies, for joining us today. And until next time, be moved, be inspired, and always be unconditionally you. And don't forget to exhale.